All right. Thank you everybody for joining. Today is Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. Time stamped. We're joined by BlueWave. They are one of the leading recruiting and staffing firms focused on the technology sector. They're based in downtown Orlando. And we have Kevin and Davis from the BlueWave team joining us. This is a tenX Talk series run through the Orlando tech community. And before I pass it over to the team at BlueWave, we do have a couple events coming up for the Orlando tech community, including our next big 10X downtown Wall Street takeover, which is June 20th. So RSVP for that. And if you're interested in membership or getting more involved with OTC, please reach out to myself or David Adelson, who's on the call, or Ashley, who's on the call as well. We'll put some more information in the chat and link after this as well. So without further ado, I will pass it to the team at BlueWave.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here, guys. We're Kevin and I are excited. This is our favorite topic. It's what we live in the day-to-day. So we felt just inclined to share some things with you, and hopefully this process will add some value to what you guys do in your world, whether it is hiring or you're working with companies hiring. But we'll introduce ourselves a little bit, let you know who we are, what we do at BlueWave, and how we can better support you in our tech community. That is something that we're extremely passionate about. So I'm Davis. I've been with BlueWave just over 2 years now, and spent over 15 years in hospitality sales, and worked with clients globally. 2020 hit, and I think, like a lot of the hospitality world, was kind of devastated by what occurred and decided to make a shift, moved back here from Southern California, and was really excited to see what was happening in our tech community. Was good friends with our CEO, familiar with our leadership here at BlueWave, and honestly, it made a lot of sense to me to make a shift, to work with people on a different level, on a different scale. And that's the business that we're in, people. So been excited to be here, seen our team grow exponentially. I've had an opportunity to be a part of that growth and the hiring internally, and use our best practices as we continue to scale our own organization. And Kevin can speak to that a little bit more because he's been here quite some time. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I am extremely passionate about tech startups, to be honest. We work with a lot of different clients, but I think when we talk about startups, when we talk about our tech community here, it's working with innovative teams, being strategic partners, aligning really with their goals and getting to know what those goals are. And that's where we really can add value as a staffing organization. That's where we lean into and find the most success with our clients, is when we build those true partnerships. And I think Kevin and I can both speak to, we have really fun clients. We have a lot of different types of clients, but our most exciting fun ones are within our local tech community here in Orlando. So we do thank you for your support on that front. So at this point, I mean, at the end of this, we're going to do a little Q&A, and we want to hear from you guys too on some of the challenges that you're facing, some, really honest questions about anything that you're coming across in your staffing. And like I said, our goal here is to give you some insight into our world, and maybe you can take that back into yours. So I will let Kev jump on, and I'm going to try to share a little PowerPoint so you guys can follow along.
Thank you, Davis. Yeah, like Davis mentioned, I'm Kevin Cowman. I'm actually the Director of Technical Fulfillment here at BlueWave, and also employee number one. I'll be celebrating 9 years on Monday with the company. Started with BlueWave as an intern. I was actually working as a cybersecurity sales intern while I was at UCF. Out of Winter Park, and basically a glorified coffee getter, snack orderer for the team. And I saw these two guys moving in across the way in this little crummy office park, and I was like, these guys look kind of cool. My boss was like, you should go over there and just talk to them, see what they do. And So I went over there and I said, hey, I'm Kevin. I work in the office across the way. That guy happened to be Charlie Lewis, who I was introducing myself to. And the next thing I knew, I was in an interview. And he was teaching me all about recruiting, which I had no idea what that was at the time. So I walked out of there and he basically said, if you want the job, it's yours. And so I haven't looked back since. And so I've spent, like I said, a great deal of time with the company. I've grown up with the company, for lack of a better term, been able to see every face that's gone through the door over the last 9 years, every company that we've serviced. Back then we had one client and maybe one job requisition to work on if we were lucky. And now just to see the growth and scale that we've been able to accomplish today is pretty astounding. And I do need to pinch myself a lot of the time. And so I have had a lot of fun with this thing. It's been an awesome ride, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we do in the next 5 to 10 years as well. And so, like I said, BlueWave, founded in 2014. I think we have the thing that I think stands us out from a lot of the competition out there and some of the other recruiting and staffing companies is Charlie's passion for being entrenched in the Orlando tech community. And that was something that from day one, he was extremely adamant that BlueWave was involved in making an impact, whether it was helping fast-growing startups with resource planning, consulting on staffing initiatives, building foundations in key leadership roles and things of that nature, to also just making sure that we were on enterprise clients who are deep-rooted here in Orlando, that we were on their radar. I remember, and I work with the Disney account. I've been servicing them for the past 6 years. It's been an awesome partnership, but I remember back in the day when we got the call that there was a chance, and it was a small window of opportunity to maybe have an opportunity to fill a role with Disney. Charlie and I stayed at the office pretty much all night. I think I ended up sleeping there, and we ended up coming through for him on one opportunity that opened up a lot of doors for us there. And so, just the company, we embody that, we look at every client that we work with as a true partnership, an extension and an arm of their business and their talent acquisition department, right? And so I think we continue to try to innovate and provide that quality approach for everybody that we work with. We're not throwing resumes at a wall to see what sticks. We're doing exact match recruiting. So whatever you need in that wish list, we're going to check all those boxes for you. So that's a little bit about BlueWave. And I'll pass it to Davis to go over, I think, what really makes, BlueWave is our process here.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So our process, you guys, whether we're working with direct hire clients, our contract clients, or project-based contract to hire, we will stay true to this process. And this is something you can take into your own organizations as you continue to strategically grow. On the front end, Kevin and I, as account managers working with our clients on the day-to-day, our first step is to require those requirements, gather those requirements. And what that means for us is honestly taking a deep dive, whether it's the hiring manager, it's the client, it's HR. We are going to get every single detail. We're going to get the soft skills, the hard skills, and all of those intangibles and things in between. I think, we love when a client comes to us and says, we have this really hard rec. We aren't able to fulfill it. We've got all these gaps, XYZ. And we're like, we've got 10 of these people in our pipeline. Or this may seem hard to you, but we go at this every single day. There's a lot of crossover with our clients, right? And so it's really, there's no, people like to use the word purple unicorn. There really isn't that rec for us. There isn't something that we're unable to take on. And I think that can be true to you and your teams as well. I know a lot of our tech community are requiring very niche requirements. And we're here to support that, no matter what those requirements look like. We take those requirements back to our recruiting team, right? And they begin the sourcing. The sourcing is the part that is going to save anybody who leverages us as a partnership is going to save them the most time. We invest in technology solutions that help us find candidates rather quickly. It allows us to find passive candidates quickly. And we're going to touch a little bit on pipeline just because I think after this, because it's worth noting and talking about for you guys as well as you continue. So once we do that sourcing, our team is going to screen and qualify. That's where they dive into the candidate's experience, their strengths, their career goals. And that's a phone interview. We do, after that, we'll do technical, we have assessments that we send from certain clients. We have several that actually require different technical assessments. And then we do a face-to-face interview after that. And that's where we meet the candidate in person. It allows us to build a really strong rapport, gauge their level of interest, make sure that we're, they're a real human, right? Where it's kind of that first interview touch point, making sure that they're serious about the opportunity by the time we get them to you or any client, that they're ready to go. They're going to package them up, and we're going to do that together as a team where we provide then, we get their references. And I think, references worth noting. It's the most skipped line item in a process for any recruiting company. And something that we do is we get those references very early on, and we call them before sometimes there's even an interview process, especially if it's a candidate that we know checks all the boxes and is going to be an auto start. We like to use that term of something that it's somebody you're excited about. We're going to get those references done. And those are important because we call on leaders, not just your friends, your colleagues, things of that nature. These are folks who the candidate reported to, who can really speak to their work ethic, their skill set, things of that nature. And then that candidate delivery, the interview coordination and offer, we are partners all along the way, not just to the candidate, but to our client. So we're going to present a full package. We're including their resume, highlights during all those conversations that we've had. We're going to have a third touch point with somebody like myself, making sure that the culture fit is all of there. And then we do a post-hire follow-up. And once that person's in the door, we keep in touch. That's really the long haul. That's for retention purposes. That's something that, if you don't leverage an agency, something your HR hopefully is doing, checking in on employees, making sure they're satisfied, they're happy. If there's any gaps, getting in front of those before you lose that candidate, before you lose that placement, especially if they're a direct hire, right? If they're contract, we're really heavily involved and we're managing that through and through. And Kevin can speak to that. He is, I think, at any given point, 80 contractors that we've got placed at various clients. So if you guys have questions about those, we are going to do a Q&A at the end, anything about that process, if I've missed anything, but really we leverage this in everything we do every day with our clients. And I think for you, this is on our website. If you ever want more details, you can go on BlueWaveRP.com. It kind of breaks down that a little bit more if you need to kind of add that into your world as well. Kev?
Yeah, so I'm here to kind of go into how we've scaled internally and how we've helped scale our clients that we've worked with. It really starts with the diversity of the type of clients that we've worked with over the years. Like I had mentioned, heavily involved in our tech startup community here locally, and walking them through, just the very beginning stages of understanding how to find those key pieces to their organization to get them where they need to go, right? So if it's early stage, mid stage, we can hop in at really any part of that process and provide value. And I would say that from an enterprise perspective, obviously a very different strategy, but I do think the ability to lean on a lot of what we learned from our startup, tech companies, we're able to take that knowledge and provide a unique perspective for, some of these bigger corporate companies. I would say that our candidate database is also a huge part of what we do, right? We've got over 6,000 candidates in our applicant tracking system. I would say that, and going down to candidate recruiter relations too, is like our big thing is long-term value and relationships, right? So our candidate base, we are touching base with anybody who's actively or passively on the job market, and we may not have a job at that particular time for them that's a perfect fit, but we're maintaining that relationship, checking in, doing follow-ups, going to lunch with them, getting to know them at a more human level, and in a much less transactional way. I think that the ability to manage our pipeline to where, you do get that perfect opportunity for someone, if you've maintained that relationship with them, they're going to trust you, that you are their advisor, and helping them find the perfect role at that time. And so I think a big part of that as well is like, our retention rates, like we're finding the right matches for the companies as well as the candidates, right? So the candidates are staying long-term, they're getting promoted from within. I've got companies that, we put somebody on as a, mid-level developer, right? And now they are the director of over an entire department in that organization, right? It's really cool to see things like that where, we've hit the nail on the head culture-wise on both sides, and everybody's aligned there. And now I get to partner with that person who we had placed years ago, and there's a level of trust because now they know exactly what process we provide because they lived it, right? Which I think is really cool. And so it's things like that I think have built our reputation to where it is. If you go on Google, it's unbelievable how many people have said great things about us. And I think we take that very seriously, and making sure our reputation stays intact and everybody gets that quality experience. And then, of course, our community involvement. We're like, again, I'm probably hitting this nail on the head a lot, but I do think it's an important part of what embodies who we are. Being heavily involved in the tech ecosystem here, roots in technology, and love going to events, love meeting all of you in person and building those relationships. I think that's a big part of what helps us grow, not only internally, right? And we're very big on our internal culture and things like that, but also growing as the tech community grows here in Orlando.
If you guys, if we're throwing out terms that aren't part of your day-to-day and we say things like pipeline or passive candidates, to take that back into your world, whoever is responsible for the growth internally, if you're not able to budget or leverage an agency like BlueWave, the opportunities that you have or that person has to do these things. Go out into the field, build the relationships. Passive candidates are truly the key to success. And when we say that, that means we're finding very niche skill sets. For instance, I have a client who will require 10 to 15 software engineers in the next year, and their skill set being very nuanced for certain reasons and requiring certifications and clearance and things of that nature. So those aren't candidates that are going to be quick to jump on the phone or we're going to find them overnight, right? So we're having those continuous conversations throughout the year, knowing our clients' hiring goals, when those roles are going to pop up, and keeping relationships with the candidates so that when those roles do open, that we have the opportunity to immediately make that phone call and go, the job that we had discussed with you, the opportunity is there. Is it something you're still interested in, right? And so you have the opportunity to do that within your own organizations, knowing those strategic goals throughout the year. Of course, we would be happy to be partners, but we are realistic in knowing that not everybody is in a funding phase to be able to, leverage a company like BlueWave. But that when you are, or you are going to a series and you agency on your budget, then it can alleviate a lot of time and a lot of stress. You may have noticed one of the first slides that mentioned it takes 42 days to fill an open requisition. That stat is pretty alarming when it comes to when you have quick turnover or a backfill, or you need growth, or you're developing a product and you have stakeholders or anybody involved in that process and you've got to answer to them. So I think Kevin and I can attest, just, you know, when we say we're out in the community, that's to support you, whether you work with us or not. If you want to go to coffee, if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, if you have a quick question, our entire account management team is there to support. You know, I think that's what we sign up for when we enter BlueWave. It's part of like the Charlie promise, is that we're going to be just as passionate as he is. If you've seen him out there, we want to do the same. So, you know, we're here to be a resource to you in any capacity. If you just want to give us a call and you have a quick question or a roadblock. I think at this point, it's a good time to kind of open up and see if you guys have any like questions or things that you've come across that maybe we can shed some light on. And that's our goal, is hopefully you walk away with a little bit more than just BlueWave, but you've got something you can take back to your team. Jump in, anybody.
Sure. I'll start off. For startup companies that are starting to scale, where do you see them go wrong with, as far as scaling, or some key hires, or just common mistakes that, as you know, the early stage companies are starting to transition into more mature kind of growth stage companies?
Yeah, do you want to take that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think we've seen a lot of interesting decisions being made in the startup community, and we try to advise you know, a lot of the time when we're going into an engagement like that, where we're supporting rapid growth. You know, I think our big thing is making sure that you know, companies are in a financial place to build and make those building blocks happen, right? I think what we've seen is companies get that's the right word, I guess, overinflated, you know, too quickly, right? They hire too quickly, or they make decisions very fast, you know. And I think our big thing is ensuring that the budget is there for them to put these key roles on site, or you know, things like that. So I would say, yeah, those types of things are also, I've seen the opposite sometimes too, where a company is extremely picky about who they bring on, which we're not saying that you shouldn't be, but maybe there's this, you know, wish list that's incredibly long, and your hiring process is drawn out, whether that's, you know, through the interview process, if it's a very, you know, stringent, you know, long multi-step process, things like that, to where, you know, you're starting behind the eight ball because you can't get this person in the door, just due to you know, your own internal processes of hiring and things like that. And so we do try to strategically advise a lot of the time on, you know, hey, here's what your competition is doing right now, from an interview process perspective, or understanding like what the landscape looks like from the candidate's point of view, right? Like understanding the job market and trends, and if it's a candidate's market, or if it's a company's market, you know, all those things kind of go into you know, those decision-making processes. But yeah,
Kevin's
would
point, I think number one would be being too picky, thinking you're marrying a candidate. I think, you know, time is of the essence with a lot of really great talent out there, and you're competing with your competition. And so if you've got a rec to fill, it's moving quickly. Sometimes it's just having like 100 different interviews like through the process, and we'll lose candidates through that. So it's really like knowing, like setting your process, being strategic, right? Knowing where your funding is coming, where those hires are coming, but then when you're ready, that you're literally ready to walk that person in the door, and that you're not being too picky on what that looks like. Yes, you need a niche skill set. Yes, that's going to matter. But at the end of the day, trusting, you know, a company like BlueWave, leveraging us for being those market experts, and knowing that we're doing that work on the forefront for you too. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I'd ask a follow-up on that, which is, does the pickiness level change depending on the stage of the company? And I ask that because when we see a lot of really early stage companies that are bringing in their first hire, or their sales lead, right? There is when you're changing the employee base by 10 or 20% by one single hire, then you're introducing a big variable into the equation. So I'm kind of wondering when you think there's a inflection point of going from kind of pickiness being the preference versus speed and time to execute.
I think understanding that, like, when we say picky, we're not compromising on skill set. It's more of, sometimes we'll have hiring managers find anything they can possibly find wrong when we really have this candidate and we know we've had multiple conversations and it's a good fit. We completely understand all those phases are going to look different. But it's really knowing that, like, if you have 3 great candidates, knowing that one of them is going to be in that process and you're going to get to the finish line, right? Versus, going, I think I need to talk to 20 different people to really make me feel like I've got the warm and fuzzies about this person.
Yeah. Yeah. And to add to that, Ken, I think, you made a good point with the very early stages, right? Like, everybody wants to make sure they are knocking that hire out of the park, right? And it comes down to the culture fit, right? The personalities aligning with your probably very small team at that time, right? So knowing that person is going to be an integral part of the growth. But I do think that there is a point in time where, you become big enough, and what that point is, I think, is probably different depending on what company or industry you're in and things like that. But I do think there is a point where, if you're hiring a, VP of sales who's going to scale a team, and then, you're hiring a business development rep, like, you probably need to move quicker to get those reps in the door than maybe, somebody who's going to be a leader in your organization, for, as long as you need. So.
Yep.
Irina chimed in, and I 100% agree. She says startups need to set the expectations with candidates and hiring agencies and accept the risk. Transparent communication is key from my personal experience. We are nothing but transparent over here, and we require that of our candidates too. And we would love our clients always to be the same, right? We can't all have the same goals if we're not being honest and setting expectations from the very front.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then I think Frank raised his hand.
I did. I had a question about candidate screening. When early stage, everyone's looking for a unicorn. They want like 15 years of experience at low cost, accepting the risks. How do you guys balance that when looking for early additions that would be the key person in a certain area, marketing or sales or otherwise? If you poach someone or get someone from corporate, it's a much different environment than that startup. We're all in it together, deep, wearing many hats, whatever needs to get done. How do you kind of balance that?
That's a great question, Frank. And you're absolutely right. I think it is just a mindset shift, especially if you're looking at someone who's been in the corporate environment with, cushy benefits and, and certain things that maybe the startup world cannot provide. I think for us, it's finding the people who maybe have that itch to scratch, that they're tired and want to, see what's out there, right? I think that, if you've got an entrepreneurial spirit and you're working a 9 to 5 with a 2.5% increase each year, sometimes you take a look at some of these fast growing tech startups and you find the people who yearn to wear multiple hats and want to be a part of a growing process and see the fruits of their labor, come through. And so I think when we're screening candidates, it's really like, do you have that inherent desire, right? And we can tell pretty quickly through, a few conversations if someone's really, really, truly wants that, or if they maybe think they want it. And then we throw some of the realistic aspects of the job at them, right? From a comp perspective, it maybe sometimes, or hey, long hours sometimes, right? Things like that. And so we try to paint as realistic of a picture as possible. I don't think there's one right way to do it or wrong way or anything like that. But I think for us, it's just getting to know the candidates and getting to know the clients as much as we can. And on the client side, sometimes it does take, a healthy confrontational conversation of like, hey, you're not going to find 15 years of experience at $50,000, whatever it may be, right? So it's like, you have to have those healthy conversations and provide maybe some market data and things like that to get them to where they need to go, right? And so
and leveraging, I will say, we've come across job descriptions that come in, it's like, we need 10 years of Unreal. Well, Unreal hasn't been around per se, that long. So that's an unrealistic expectation. Let's bring that down. They may need 10 years of, experience as a software engineer, but in what, technology are they using, or were they actually developing, and has that actually been around, right? We've come across that. So we'll find those little niches and we'll call them out, and only in the sense that we want to help, right? Like we can't find a candidate that doesn't exist. We do love to find the unicorns. That's what we do. That's actually what makes our job so rewarding and so fun, is when we find the perfect, you see us cheering and jumping and ringing bells over here. So, just like you would if you would find that person for yourself.
I had a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Davis. First of all, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you both. I'd love to hear kind of, as employers are shifting right now to skill-based training, how much, what academic degree, and does that even matter in today's job market? And what role is it playing in technology specifically?
Boy, that is a hot topic right now, David. I would say, there's still companies that we work with that will require bachelor's degree minimum. They like to see, the MBA or whatever it may be. I think from a certification perspective, what companies like to see, or what they're taking from people who are getting certifications, is that self-improvement and that growth mindset, continuous learner mindset, things like that. But again, for every job, like I don't know, it's hard to say for every single job, you need a certification or an education or certain education to do it. I think, I don't know, Davis, if you want to jump in, if what you're seeing.
I think it can be very role specific, to your point, David. I think like that is going to be one-offs. You're going to have the opportunity where, especially if we're looking into, really senior leadership roles, those people that generation is going to have the education behind them. We are seeing the younger folks coming in, if we're talking about developers or software engineers, their skill set is starting at 10 years old, right? Like they're starting to hone in on what they're doing at a very early age. And you can find some of the most talented developers who don't have an actual formal education behind it. So I think when we dive into experience, we always say, especially when we're talking to our recruiters, people are so much more than their resume. And we need to be taking a deeper dive into their actual experience, looking at what they're actually doing, getting those examples. But that really is going to come down to the organization and what you actually require. I mean, different companies are going to require different certifications for various reasons. And, we've got federal clients we support in that space. I have an enterprise client that they need it just to justify. You have to have a degree to justify your salary. So it varies, but specifically to our tech community, I think it's going to vary on the roles that you're looking for in the skill sets, because certifications are going to be more advantageous than the formal educations that people are going through and finally settling on a degree, right? But if it's something that we're looking and honing on a really specific skill set, those people typically are drawn to that very early on, and they're going to have that in their background.
Yeah. And I hope that we see a shift, right? We've got so many talented people in this tech community that, worked various odds and ends types of jobs before they found technology or software development, right? Maybe they've done an intensive boot camp to get them to the level that they need to be at, and just, I'm hoping more companies provide those types of folks with a chance, because again, you talk to these people and they've completely put like their careers on the line to follow this passion and to get their foot in the door in the technology industry. And again, I hope we see more of a shift of companies giving those types of people an opportunity, because we've seen so many success stories of people like that we helped companies kind of get that person to the finish line, across the finish line, and they're just crushing it. So
let me ask this. Is there anybody here that is like really struggling with a specific type of role that they either need or are continuously filling? Is there any like, I think our team, we're in it, so immersed in it in the day-to-day, right? This is what we do. So it seems so easy for us to go, we can find this candidate in no time. Is there anybody here that's like, I've been really struggling with XYZ, or anything that we can help in this moment, or any other questions that kind of relate to kind of what David was touching base on too, as far as skill set?
I mean, I can chime in here if no one has something, which is I just see a commonality throughout early stage companies with AI right now, obviously.
Yeah.
And just curious how you're seeing that talent market, because we've seen fully burdened expenses up, 400,000 a year for some of the really highly qualified AI talent. And just if you can kind of opine on what you're seeing from a competitive landscape and competition for that talent.
Well, we can't really pull from enterprise when it comes to that. When we're talking about what it's going to cost, right? We're not talking, we know we're avoiding the Metas, the Googles, people who are really able to afford that kind of talent. We typically won't have a lot of conversations with those types of folks, because we know that, our startups aren't going to necessarily be able to afford them. It doesn't mean that talent's not out there.
Yeah, I'm saying fully burdened, including equity. I'm just wondering what you're seeing from like how is an early stage startup able to attract and retain and land really highly qualified AI talent when we have OpenAI paying 2 million a year and a lot of venture-backed companies paying 500 to $1 million for qualified AI talent?
I think it's buying into the mission or the product, right? Like, they really have to buy into what it is, having a purpose and then a piece of the game. And it's really having those conversations. I have a client that it's pretty hard. They've got a lot of different requirements. And so when we talk to those candidates, it's very mission based. It's very like, are you driven? Are you bought into this? Is this going to be for you? And some of them literally like, I will sweep the floor there. Yes. So that's kind of how we have to tackle those.
Yeah. And I think having some sort of stake in the game, and a startup's going to have to realize that, in order to attract top talent like that, you might have to give a piece to somebody like that, in order to get them to come over.
Sometimes it's finding somebody who's so burnt out from that world too.
Yeah, that's true.
They're like, I want to provide now purpose to somebody else and help and give my expertise to grow. And it's not about the money for me. And we do have a lot of candidates like that, to be honest. We love it when we find them, because they're like, no, I've been around the block and now it's time for me to give back, and I want to provide some value and help somebody else. I know it sounds like it can't happen, but it does when we're living in the day-to-day. Well,
any other questions?
Yeah, I would ask what you're seeing on the local talent landscape. Any areas that you think the local tech community is uniquely strong or maybe concerningly weak?
We're seeing a lot of growth, of course, in our federal space. And so I'm seeing our startups pull from pretty, enterprise federal into startup world. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the burnout and people wanting a shift. We have incredible talent here, and I'll go to bat for that. In fact, we've had to a couple times where, companies have multiple headquarters or they're talking about shifting, and does Orlando have that talent? I think we're growing in that space year over year, and I hope that continues. I think people like David, who are literally, that's, their goal is to continue to grow our ecosystem in that sense. That we'll continue to see that. We're lucky enough to have Full Sail and UCF in our backyard. And so we're going to see them coming right out of school, But it is, I have not seen a huge shortage in the talent, and I think we come across that with clients asking us all the time. Like, are we going to be able to find this person here? And if not, guys, we got to be open to relocation conversations, because those exist too, right?
Yeah.
Especially for those high level opportunities that you really got to get some nuanced talent in. Sometimes it's got to be open to some relo.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Kent, we're not Silicon Valley yet, or anything like that. And we don't claim to be, I don't think. So yeah, some of the more innovative skill sets that are coming out, or are needed, we're not seeing it as much here yet, but it's coming, right? So I do think that, it's all about, getting people like educated and involved in those skill sets early on, right? So that they can become those subject matter experts here. And then, I think relocation is going to be a big thing, right? And I think there's a lot to like about Orlando from a relocation perspective from California and some of these other, the New Yorks of the world. We're seeing it, of course. Yeah.
And that's a whole nother ballgame. We could have a whole nother conversation on selling relocation candidates for another time, but.
Yeah, no, and I hear that with companies throughout the state, not just Orlando. It's Miami companies that are getting to Series C and D and E and needing to bring in, SVP level developers are really struggling to get there. And just from a statewide perspective, we've seen a couple of companies relocate back out of the state because of the developer shortage compared to some of the West Coast markets. So I think there's, that's one of the concerns that I think that we have from an early stage investment perspective is having the talent in the later stages just to get to that kind of critical mass.
Yeah.
I think that requires, if there's an in-office, model too,
Yeah.
Definitely our clients who are open to more remote are going to be able to find that talent quicker than they're requiring them in office 5 days a week, And we have both of those in our world, so.
That we do.
All right, I'll pause here, see if anybody has any other questions. I could keep going, but I'm not going to.
If you guys haven't connected with Kevin and I on LinkedIn, please do. Like I said, we're just a message away. We sit downtown in our office here. We love to go out and have chats. If there's anything we can provide value in your world, we want to do so. So we're here to support you in any capacity. And we're grateful that you listened to us today.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, everyone, to hang out with us for a little bit.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Ken. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.